Hello, everyone. My name is Philip Palumbo. I'm the host of the Palumbo podcast, where we interview successful founders of companies to learn how they got to the top. Today, we are fortunate enough to have with us Dr. David Pearlstone, a remarkable leader who brings over 25 years of clinical surgical oncology experience to his current role as CEO of DicomDirector, a cutting edge medical imaging company that's revolutionizing how healthcare professionals visualize and interact with medical data. With his MD from NYU and MBA from Yale University School of Management's Leadership in Healthcare program, David represents that rare combination of deep clinical expertise and business acumen. At DicomDirector, David is leading the charge in next generation medical imaging software, including their flagship product, Intravision XR, a platform that creates anatomically accurate 3D holograms from standard CT and MRI scans, viewable through augmented and virtual reality devices. It's the kind of technology that's transforming how surgeons plan procedures and how medical students learn autonomy. What makes David's perspective so valuable is his unique vantage point. He's been the surgeon using these technologies in high stakes situations, and now he's executive developing the next generation of tools that will shape the future of medical imaging. So, Dr. Pearlstone, thank you so much for being with me today, and I appreciate it very much. Incredible resume. Congratulations with all your success.
Thanks, Phil. It's a pleasure to be here.
So if you could, I mean, I know I spoke a lot about just now about what you do. So if you could just talk about your company, what exactly your mission is.
Sure. It's it can be a very complicated world. There's a lot of initials and things, but really, what we do is pretty simple. We are a software company. Number one, we don't make hardware, and our software is the software that actually runs in an augmented or virtual reality headset device. So that's where we live. We make software that runs in an extended reality headset device, and that market is exploding and very interesting. What our software does is it allows you to view a CT or MRI scan rather than as a bunch of two-dimensional black and white slices. It is reconstructed as a full 3D model that could be taken apart and entered and operated on and do all sorts of interesting things. Not the least of which is to take those images actually to the operating room. And if you place these holographic images on top of the patient and register them to the patient correctly, you can have virtual X-ray vision. So that's a bit of a mouthful, but
No, not
that's
at all.
what
No, no,
we do.
not at all. So that's absolutely amazing. So how did you come about developing this?
I wish I could say I developed it. I didn't. I think that we have a very good founder story in a lot of ways. It's pretty classical, and I think it addresses something that's crucially important if you want to be a startup. So our company is essentially three of us. There's three of us that are founders of two partners. One, Ani, is the computer guy. He's the one who wrote the actual computer program. My other partner is Ted, and he's a software salesperson, been selling software his entire career. So the two of them are lifelong entrepreneurs, and they're the ones that actually had developed this software. And this is where it got interesting. They've been doing this. They're serial entrepreneurs, and they had developed this, and they went out and were trying to market it, and were having absolutely no success at all. And at that point, I was the director of an incubator in New Haven, and I was sitting listening to people pitching digital healthcare companies. And Ted walked in one day with an AR headset and put it on my head and showed me their software, and I was completely blown away. It was incredible, truly in the sense of incredible to me. I kept accusing him that it was fake. I didn't think you could possibly do this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he was very happy, but he was very taken aback because he then told me, well, we've had no success at all in trying to get this to market. And that's when the magic happened. And what it came down to is they had no idea who to try to sell this to. They were trying to sell it into the radiology market, which and I think any doctor I tell this story to immediately laughs and says, "Oh my God, that's the last people on earth I would try and sell this to." And you would only understand that if you understand how medicine works and what people do and their different roles. The fact is, our product is really for what we call the end user of the CT scan. This is not a better way to read CT scans. Radiologists are very, very, very good at what they do. They're not looking for a solution. And I guess that's probably one of the big takeaways of the whole tale. If you need to be solving a problem that somebody actually wants solved. They were trying to show this to radiology, and radiology said, this isn't a problem for us. The people it's a problem for is surgeons who are standing in the operating room trying to look at two-dimensional images and do a three-dimensional operation. That's a challenge. So to bring it all together, it was a really great experience of this. They had invented a really great product, but didn't know where it fit into the market. And so the two takeaways is, number one, don't solve a problem no one's looking to solve. And number two, when you build a company, find the people that know what you don't know. I could not write my code to write my way out of a paper bag. And please don't ever ask me to sell anything. I have no skills in either of those two things, but my two partners are brilliant at both of those things. Neither one of them knows much about clinical healthcare, but that is something I do know quite well. So that's how it all fits together.
I love it. So I literally did a podcast yesterday too with a gentleman, and what we talked about, and what he talked about is, when establishing a company, establish a company based on trying to solve for a problem.
Absolutely.
And I just want to make sure I capture this. So what your company is solving for is when the surgeon, the end user, is preparing for surgery. So right before surgery, he then puts on the virtual reality and then is able to see where he's going to be performing surgery right then and there.
So great question. The the problem that's being solved is that for everyone other than a radiologist, looking and understanding and interpreting CT and MRI scans is difficult. It's a skill set, and the fact is, it's a skill set that's unnecessary, because what you try and do when you're looking at these scans is you're trying to reconstruct a three-dimensional image in your mind from a series of two-dimensional images. Well, what we've done is do that for you. To answer your question, in the clinical use case that we're talking about, doctors using this for clinical use, there are plenty of other places, education, and a lot of other places where this technology is very important. But in clinical use, we break it into three phases: a preoperative, intraoperative, and postoperative. So preoperatively, it's about pre-surgical planning. Every surgeon, at some point before the operation, they sit down with the images and they plan the operation. Now, if it's a straightforward operation they've done a million times, that's probably a pretty quick process. But I guarantee you, at some point, they looked at the images and said, yes, 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 this is what we're going to do.
Right.
In more complicated cases, it can be quite extensive, involving people from around the world, getting opinions, presenting the case at a conference to make a decision about what the best surgical approach is. So there's that whole pre-surgical planning, and the ability to do that in a virtual environment where you have a three-dimensional model. I can't stress enough the value of having a three-dimensional model that can show you the physical relationships between objects, and that's shown very well in the technology. The next phase is the intraoperative use case, and that I had mentioned, where you can now take these images into the operating room, place them on top of the patient, and register them there. And now you have this X-ray vision concept, and you can use it for direct surgical navigation. That is something that we have customers doing that around the world every day with our technology. So that's a very exciting use case. And then the third leg is the post-op component, which is essentially case presentation and discussion of either good outcomes or bad outcomes, or presentation of the case in an academic setting, at a meeting, et cetera, et cetera. The ability to show these things in 3D rather than as a series of 2D slices, again, is it's just a significantly better way of viewing the information.
So the benefit then is the outcome of the actual surgery itself.
Well, the bet that's a good question. That certainly is a goal. At the end of the day, any progress in medicine, I certainly hope the goal is better patient care, or more efficient patient care, and that we do believe this technology leads to better patient care. It will be some time before anyone can say that using this technology leads to a very specific improved outcomes, et cetera, et cetera. But we are involved in a number of clinical trials, as are other companies, and it is showing a lot of value. The way I would put it at this point in the literature is, as a surgeon, anything that's going to make my job easier is going to result in a better operation.
Absolutely.
So that's really the way I put it. I can't tell you right now, oh, you'll get less blood loss, less operative time, et cetera. I do think you will. I think if you have better pre-surgical planning and better visualization for navigation, you're going to have a more efficient operation. You're going to spend less time dissecting blindly, possibly getting into complications. So I do believe we'll end up with shorter OR times, better planning, less blood loss, lower infection rate because that correlates with OR time. But that will be proven in the literature, and I'm pretty confident it will show that.
That's fascinating. And has the feedback from people utilizing the product, have they admitted to that?
Oh, the feedback has been wonderful. I have to say, as frustrating as the startup world can be, and it can be very, very difficult. Um, every day we get feedback from customers that just really makes it all worthwhile. We've got a bunch of quotes from people saying things. This made the operation doable. I wouldn't have been able to do this operation if I didn't have this. We had actually a great case, and any doctor can appreciate this. A case was not done based on looking at our presentation of the case. It was felt that what we demonstrated in this, the relationship of the tumor to some of the musculature, was not going to allow for an adequate reconstruction. And so the case did not go forward. And that was not a decision they were willing to make based on the 2D images. Again, it's all about this three-dimensional conformational relationship between organs in orthopedics, neurosurgery, oncology surgery. That is really very much the crux of the matter. It's about three-dimensional relationships, whether it's finding a tumor. So we say in oncology that the core principle in surgical oncology, which is what I spent my career doing, is find the needle in the haystack without burning down the haystack. Right. So you have to get there efficiently. And neurosurgery is very much that way. Neurosurgery, the entire history of neurosurgery is based around the idea of get to that tumor in as straight a line as possible with as minimal disruption of the surrounding tissue. So I think it's pretty intuitive to see how this technology would be very helpful in doing that. If you look at orthopedics is a different game. Orthopedics is reconstruct a three-dimensional puzzle. You've got pieces of bone or whatever it may be, and you've got to rebuild that, but it's a 3D puzzle. It's not 2D. Again, this technology is very helpful if in that view. And I could go on in different
Sure.
surgical approaches, but that's what it really comes down to.
And
how this is going to help you view things.
Yes, and you're very humble about it. And I think you said before, you're not really a salesperson. And the way I'm hearing about it, I'm getting excited, and how I would.
One thing I've learned in this world that CEO stands for Chief Excitement Officer. Yeah, I've been told that. I'm very passionate about it. Which is good. I mean, what else? What can I say? I'm a surgeon. I saw this, and I said, this must be. If we can do this, we need to make this available. I'm telling you, I'm a surgeon. This would be very good.
I'm with you. I'm with you. So chief excitement officer, versus those who are just used car salesmen, there is a big difference. Like, for example, obviously I'm CEO of my company, and what we're doing, I feel, is transforming the wealth management industry. And I really say that with true passion, not to just sell people to become my client. And It's because I've been doing this 25 years, much like you have experience doing what you're doing, and you could see what your product is doing. I could see what my product is doing. And I feel like it's not just getting excited just to be a used car salesman. It's truly, I have such a passion for what we're doing here, which is similar to what you're doing there. And the good thing about what you're and for really both of us, right? Like you have, data to back it up, sort of, and then you got experiences with surgeons who are performing surgery using your product and their experiences and feedback. And you could see the 3D versus 2D, the advantages of that. So it's not like you're not just saying it because you're excited, because there's stuff to back it up, and that's why you're excited. So that's the big difference. So so most of this of your product is around the oncology of medicine, correct?
No, no. I tend to go there because that's my background, and I love that use case. No, we are again. You asked this from the very beginning. Sort of, what's the mission? What's the point of our company? The point of our company. Does your work involve looking at CT or MRI scans? Then you should be using this way to look at them.
Right.
It's just a better way of doing it.
Right.
And to take it a step further, I think it would be hard to imagine that in the future, this isn't how we're looking at the scans. Why wouldn't we? CT and MRI scans are actually, the data is obtained three-dimensionally. As you may know, the person passes through a donut. It's a three-dimensional image. The idea of slicing that image into 2D images, that is an old idea because we didn't have a way to view things in 3D. Well, now that we have extended reality where we can actually have a virtual 3D object that we can move around, move inside, enlarge, take apart, etc. Well, now that we can do that, we can actually look at these CT and MRI scans that we've been slicing up for the last 25 years. We can actually look at them the way they really are supposed to be looked at, which is as a three-dimensional object. That was the whole point of doing it.
I mean, it sounds
So really, in my view, we're just kind of really being able to now catch up to what CT and MRI have to offer. And there is a lot of very, very exciting stuff coming down the pike. And I am not an imaging expert by any means, but the combination of image acquisition, so photon counting CTs and things like that, very amazing technologies. And where we live, which is image presentation. So image acquisition has been extraordinary. What the generation of CT and MRI scanners is unbelievable, but we have been extraordinarily limited in our ability to view that information. It was not long ago, and in fact, still to this day, people look at them as a piece of plastic held up in front of a light bulb. And I say that jokingly, but it's not a joke. Every operating room in America still has a light box in it. Okay, so now we look at it on a computer screen. That's a big improvement for sure, but it's still a black and white 2D image. I mean, my goodness, that $1 million MRI machine you bought is producing a data set with mountains of data, and you're looking at like the tiniest sliver of that data.
that's wild.
As I say, to me, this is not sort of like if, it's, well, of course, why, if you can do it this way, why wouldn't you do it this way? It just seems quite natural. We sort of been moving towards there in healthcare technology, the adoption of technology in healthcare. I say this as a surgeon. I say this as a 64-year-old surgeon. I would say these days is extremely age dependent. My era and many generations of surgeons have been somewhat resistant to technology. I don't want to say suspicious, but wary of anything new. We're trained in a way to do things. We get very good at it. And if you're going to make me change to something new, you're really going to have to prove the benefit. The new generation of doctors, surgeons that has come up and is coming up now has a very, very, very different view of technology. I say my generation, we barely tolerated technology. This generation of surgeons is demanding technology. If you've grown up playing video games with heads-up displays and 3D images and these kinds of things, and now I'm asking you to look at a black and white 2D image on a 256 grayscale computer screen, you're going to laugh at me. Okay. Particularly when you understand how that CT scan was done. You're going to laugh when I explain to you, yeah, now we're just going to slice it up and look at it as black and white slices. That would seem silly. So I think it's there's a fair amount of inevitability, the advance of how we look at imaging. And this is all changing. It's not just even in healthcare. There's in the world of extended reality, I'm very excited about the deal between Apple and Canon that was recently announced. Canon is now going to come out with a series of what are called stereoscopic lenses for all of their cameras, so that when you take pictures, you will take them stereoscopically, so that when you view them in an extended reality headset, they are truly 3D. You will truly feel as if you are in the picture.
Wow.
And that's a done deal. That hardware is in production.
Right.
It's just a glimpse into where the future is going to be. I'm old enough to remember going to the drugstore and getting my pictures printed on paper.
Right.
And we don't do that anymore. Now we look at them we don't even look on our computers. We just look at them on our phone right away.
Right.
That's going to change. You're going to look at your photos in some type of visual headset device that presents them as three-dimensional images.
I agree. So current MRI testing right now in CAT scans, what you're saying is that the imaging is in 2D.
So, pardon me if you really want to take a bit of a deep dive on the tech. So up until about a certain point, CT scans were actually the data, and I'm just going to refer to CT as sort of the paradigm. MRI essentially considered as being the same. The original CT scanner, the way it worked is the patient was here, the donut spun around, took images, patient moved, donut spun around, took images. So the output actually was slices. That's what came out, right? In about the year 2000, we moved into now what we use now pretty much everywhere in the world, which is called helical CT. And in helical CT, the patient and the donut move at the same time. So you get this as an output. So to do a little math here, rather than having a data set that is a series of x squared equations, right, a bunch of 2D images and a whole stack of them, you now get one single 3D image coming out. Okay. So since the year 2000, that's actually what's been coming out of the CT scan is a 3D image.
Right.
But we haven't had a way to look at it for two reasons. Number one, if you were able to just look at that image, what you would see is the skin, because that's the outside, and you would. So we had to develop something called segmentation, which allows you to take apart the inside parts. But then the other idea is that up until recently, the only way we had to view that 3D image was to go back and slice it up again, because we only had 2D screens.
Right.
So now that we have the ability to do segmentation and not view what are called volume renderings, so we can actually look at segmented images, and we have the ability to look at those images in a true 3D platform like extended reality, that's why we can now actually, for the very first time, look at what those CT scans have been showing us literally since about the year 2000. We've had helical CT for about 25 years. And we have taken these beautiful 3D single data set X cubed images and sliced them back up into 2D images that we then show on a 256 grayscale computer screen.
Right.
Almost embarrassing when you start to think about it that way, that what we're actually looking at is just the tiniest bit of what is actually there in that data set.
So then your company, are there other companies that do what you do?
Yes, but we're much better than them.
Right. No, that's great.
No, yes, of course we have competition.
So let's talk about the business aspect now. So when did your company start?
We were founded in 2017.
Okay, so prior to that, were you always a business owner?
No. So as I said, there are three of us. My two partners, lifelong entrepreneurs, they had a very successful exit some years ago, and they set up what they wanted for their lives, which is a software company. It's very nicely set up. Ani is in India, hires developers there, and Ted is in the United States and sells the software here in the States, doing lots and lots of healthcare. They're doing a lot of other things now, a lot of AR, VR things. They developed this, as I said, in 2017, and had no interest, and really were struggling with it. At that time, I was the director of an incubator. I had left clinical medicine after going to business school, a whole story in itself.
Wow.
As I said, he came in and saw this, and that was the magic because I saw the immediate use case. I saw what they didn't realize, what they had, the value of it. So that's how we got to where we are now. And so I
So
joined in
came in,
2018.
so you came into the picture in 2018.
In 18, correct?
And
Yes.
prior to that, you were practicing medicine.
So prior to that, I was the executive director of an incubator, a healthcare incubator in New Haven. And prior to that, I was doing healthcare administration, a pretty common track for MDs who go to business school. Very commonly, you start moving into healthcare administration, and what
It's
happened to
true.
me
It's
happens to
true.
a lot of
Yeah.
people I know. You start doing less and less clinical, more and more administrative. And to be honest, I was not enjoying that so much. I was enjoying using the business school skills, but I was not enjoying the business of healthcare very much. And some opportunities came up in the startup world. I had no background in entrepreneurship. If you told me some time ago I'd be an entrepreneur, I would have laughed. I feel like I have no risk tolerance. But here I am because, again, this opportunity was it just made too much sense to me.
First of all, I commend you and I'm excited for you because it's not an easy leap. And I oftentimes talk about this on the show that you were an employee most of your life. Now you converted to employer, right? So, and now you've been doing it. Well, here we are in 2025, right? So 7 years later, how do you feel about your decision to walk on that invisible bridge that now is a bridge?
I couldn't be happier personally, but my case is specific in being a doctor, and a surgeon, and just the decision to do clinical medicine. But I'm still very much in healthcare, so I'm very happy. I am very happy. Not I miss taking care of patients. I definitely miss that. I miss some of the challenges technically of surgery, but I kind of feel like I kind of get to do the fun parts now without the painful parts, to be honest, a lot of
Yeah.
it. Um, I also very much like it's fun for me. I'm almost always the oldest person in the room. I'm almost always the least educated person in the room as far as what we're talking about. And I really enjoy that. That's a lot of fun. It really is. I am never bored, never. um, and you're right, it's a big commitment. And I was told that very early on in the startup world. One of the things investors look for is commitment. That's they want to see that you quit a very nicely paying job
Right. I'm sure. Seriously.
to do something that was
Right.
100% risk.
Yeah.
So that I don't want to speak for myself, but I think investors see that as that's a commitment
Yeah.
level that's important.
So what I loved about it when you said it before is, I think it's really important is to identify your skill sets and identify areas of business that you're not as skilled and
Absolutely.
and delegating that out. And that's what makes a really successful firm. And I think like two things for people listening to this to really take away from this is number one is when you're starting a business or you're in a business, right, that where they're competitors is you got to solve for a problem that people aren't really solving for. And we talked about that. And that's a big part of the business and the core mission of the business, which we talked about. And then, then whether it's employees or co-founders, in your case, it's co-founders, identifying what your skill sets are, your strengths and your weaknesses, you delegate. That's super, super important. In terms of growth of the business, right? So I always say, like in business, there are silos or buckets of growth initiatives that you could initiate to try to grow the business. Let's say from 500,000 to maybe 1 million, and you want to climb that ladder. You don't want to not grow the business because then you're going to die, and you got to stay away from competitors. So just tell me about if this is part of what you do or not do, or if I'm sure you're involved, is growth initiative. So you have this product, now you have to grow it, and we talked a little bit about before. So what is the mindset in terms of growing and getting the word out there?
Great questions. That's right. That's the core of most startups. I view us as a very, very typical startup. to your point of, you start out and you spend, you're not making any money. You go through this valley of death, and so those are the rough nights. And then you start to make a bit of money, and next thing you know, you're making as much as you're spending. Well, how about that? That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And now you get to that magic moment. Well, what do we do now? And so I view us as sort of at that point. We've proven that the market likes what we do. We've had enough people say, yes, this makes sense. Yes, I will pay money for this. And I think this has a future. I don't stay up nights worrying about that anymore. And I guess that's an important point for any founder. When you're past the like, wow, I know I believe in this, but is anyone else? When you get back to the point, it's like, okay, pretty clearly people like this. There's no doubt. Now it's a business problem. Now it's just straight up business school, in my view.
Yeah. I agree with
And
that.
so understand your market, understand your technology, blah blah. So in our specific case, we have very specific use. Number one, we're in healthcare. That brings its own complexities. But more importantly for us, we are very dependent on the hardware of extended reality. Okay, it's like we write software. I think we are quite analogous to a company that writes apps for a smartphone before smartphones were really hit the market. That's kind of where we are. Our app only works in that. That's what it does. So without extended reality, we don't exist. So we are dependent on the development of extended reality. And again, even that was something that was worrisome for a number of years. Was this actually going to have legs? Was it going to go away? And a lot of tough nights, Microsoft going out of the business, but then Meta came along and went crazy with it. And now Apple came out, but then Apple had some bumps this year, but now the announcements from Apple are very strong. So our view, number one, and I think this is really important, it is proven to me by companies that are certainly smarter than I am, and I mean Meta, Apple, Google, that extended reality is here to stay. Don't know how it's going to play out. Don't know what it's going to look like. Don't know what it's going to be. But there is no doubt these big companies are dedicated to the idea of selling a hardware device that is a device you look through in some way. So some sort of glasses type device that provides images that can be used to create extended reality. I think everyone would agree that Apple and Meta and Google are dedicated to that idea, right? We've seen Ray-Bans out already with their smart glasses. So the hardware will happen. So we have to ride along with that. So that's the big thing you need to understand.
Yeah.
Based on that, what I say then, and this is my personal view of looking at what's happening, I think we're 18 to 24 months away from a very significant market inflection. I think that and so to use the term head-mounted display, that's sort of the industry term for all of those things, right? We call it a head-mounted display, whether it's a pair of cool-looking Ray-Bans or a huge, big Apple Vision Pro, it's all a head-mounted display. When head-mounted displays are ubiquitous, and we feel they will be as ubiquitous as phones are, then our software becomes a no-brainer. So how do we get from here to there? And I do believe, based on hardware things, that's going to be an X period of time. So again, it's a business proposition. How do you get from here to there? Well, number one thing I'm going to tell you, probably not going to be a lot of revenue. There'll be some, because there's always early adopters. There's no doubt there'll be some. But there's not going to be the amount that there's going to be in the future. Because again, it's like you're selling iPhone apps when we had flip phones. You're almost there, almost, right? But you got to wait until we get to the point where everyone has one of these. So our business plan at this point is concentrated on key opinion leaders and early adopters. We strive to get this in the hands of people who see the value of it and will use it over the next 18 to 24 months, be publishing in the literature, be presenting at meetings, be teaching their residents this technology, so that when that market inflection occurs, we are well known amongst the people who are the ones who are now going to go out and do the buying.
That's phenomenal. That's absolutely phenomenal.
Oh, I
So
hope so. Thank you.
no, it does. I mean, it's what you have to do. You have to be in front of your audience essentially. So let this transition to profits and wealth management, right? So the book that I wrote is Make Work Optional. The idea behind the book is not to necessarily say I'm going to retire at 60, 65, 70, 75 because my cousin did, my brother did, my sister did, but it's saying how can I get to work optional as quickly as possible, which means that you have complete financial independence. So when you're a founder of the business like I am, you are, and many other people are, how do you think about financial independence?
I'm not sure you're talking to the right person. I mean, I wouldn't. I'm not sure I'd advise anybody to do what I'm doing. It's
Right.
scary as hell. If I didn't have the absolute confidence in what we're doing, it would be disastrous um, for me. And so, I don't know how to answer that question, to be honest. Here's what I do think along those lines. I think that number one, the idea of retirement, if the concept of retirement's like a big thing that you've thought about it a lot in your life, you're probably not going to be an entrepreneur because
Absolutely.
that's not the way entrepreneurs think.
Yeah.
I realized a long time ago, but I tried to retire before and I was not, that had too many people said, yeah, good luck with that. It's just not in my nature to not do anything. So, that's kind of one way to look at it. If you're that kind of person. So then what I would say is, if you're the kind of person who buys into what you're saying, like get to the point where, okay, I don't have to work, but I need to do something. Here's my advice. And this is because I had this experience and I was lucky because it just happened to me. But here's my very, very, very strong advice. I said, it's my friend, go do something you don't know anything about and be, but go into something where your knowledge is important and other people in that field be the missing link in somebody's company. So in
Yeah.
my case, it was I knew medicine. I got a guy as a salesman and a software guy. They didn't know anything about medicine. So I was the key thing. If you're you're an engineer and you're really good at designing physical things, whatever. Go find a company that's got a great idea. The one thing they're missing is an engineer that can actually make a prototype. Find that company because what you'll find, and this is the big conclusion I had, what you're going to find is you get to be a certain age and you're kind of bored maybe a little bit with what you do. And to be perfectly honest, you do not value your own skill set anymore. You feel that others don't value your skill sets anymore. And so you start to not value your skill sets. There is nothing more encouraging and rejuvenating than to go in a bunch of people, particularly when they're all younger than you. And everyone in the room is quiet when they ask a question. They look at you because they're like, yeah, go ahead, tell us. That that's a lot of fun,
Yeah.
when you're
Yeah.
contributing that to a new organization. It will make you feel young again. So that's my advice to everybody. Take whatever it is you spent your life being really good at and go bring that to someone who's missing that. Because I guarantee you somebody's missing it. There's always a hole to be filled. Um, don't go do something because you just want to do it. You won't last long.
Yeah.
There's way too
I
much
love that.
frustration.
I think that's great. I think it's really, really great advice. And just going back to what you were saying before, in terms of you you have to always be doing something. I was talking to my great friend running this morning together, and we were talking about. I think he said to me, he goes, "Phil, what's your number if you had to, be financial independent?" And I said to him whatever it was, and I said, the reality is that if you stopped working today, what are you going to do every day? There's so many days you can golf, so many days that just so much travel you can doing, and if you enjoy a few cocktails here and there, you can't be drinking every day. It's not healthy, right? So
Too much possibility for bad habits, that's for sure.
it's true. I remember this gentleman when I was at Merrill Lynch, a financial advisor. He stopped working at 64, sold his business, had a great exit, and then 84 he got back into business and became a financial advisor. And he literally died at his desk. And he said because he was going to the country club quite often, drinking too much, and just became a very unhealthy lifestyle. So, listen, the financial independence part, the value of that is that you don't have to worry about money. And then you can do what you said, right? You could do whatever you want at that point. So, and just one last thing is as it relates to what we just talked about. You talked about the company initially as a startup, was slow to make money, and all of a sudden started making money. So now you're a co-founder. Now you guys have profits, right? And maybe not,
We have
right?
revenue.
So
Right.
you
So
have,
here's another conclusion as a startup. Profit is an almost nonsensical word because I can change my expenses tomorrow.
that's
I
right.
mean, we have an extremely small number of employees. I have virtually no expenses. You want me to make us look profitable on paper? I can do that. I can
Yeah,
make it. I mean, it's a paper magic
true.
trick. So
That's
it doesn't, when you're this small, when you're a startup, it's not really a good concept. What's more important is that you're revenue positive. That's what you want to focus on. People pay you money for your product. How you spend that money, that's a different question. Do you spend it or not? I mean, that's your expenses. So, want to be
right.
profitable.
Right.
Don't spend any of the money they pay you.
I agree with you. I agree. So is your company raising money from investors?
Yes,
And so
right now.
you work with venture funds?
Yes.
Yeah, I should introduce you to a partner with my firm. Would you?
I would love to. It's a yeah. We didn't talk about that as much as for all the excitement and all the great things and everything good thing I said about in this world that I love. Fundraising is the most unpleasant
Oh yeah,
thing
of
I've
course,
ever done.
of
It
course.
is the one thing that has really made me, that's just it's made me unhappy and angry and any negativity I've had in the last, whatever 8 years of doing this, it's only been around that, how
Yeah,
painful it is. And of course,
it is. It's very
typical,
painful.
typical me, I come in and try and raise money. It was historically the worst trying to raise money, like, ever. So, yeah, it's difficult, but it is what it is. And actually right now things are going well. So,
So have you had a fundraise yet?
yes, we have a very, very wonderful group of angel investors. We've done a seed round, and that's been great. And I absolutely love them to death. They are really a terrific group of very supportive people. These are the ones that they put money on an idea. They really did.
What
Now I
value?
got a product. Now I got stuff. We can show people. Blah blah blah. And these are people who I just kind of drew it out on paper, and they're like, yeah, okay, I'll invest. So we love our early investors, but
Good for
now
you.
we're
Are
we're
you looking to, so you now looking for a Series A round? Are you?
it's a little bit complicated. I'm not sort of really at liberty to say too terribly much, but we have a multi-pronged fundraising effort going on right now.
Okay,
So
good. So we'll talk more about it. So and where are you located, David?
so our business is headquartered in New Haven, Connecticut. We have deep roots at Yale, and Ted and myself. We're big Connecticut roots. But that said, we have been from day one and it will always be an extremely global company. We have a big footprint in India, both in Pune and in Delhi. And our customer base really is Africa, South America, Europe, North America, and Asia. We're everywhere, not in Japan, but
Very cool.
yeah, and that's one of our three business pillars is global approach. So
Very cool. Very cool. Ironically, Dr. Pearlstone, I'm actually going to Yale tomorrow.
oh,
My older son, he's has a prospect date for lacrosse. He's a rising junior. So tomorrow
nice.
they get evaluated and all that type of stuff. So ironically, we're on this call today, and obviously you're involved with Yale, so it's pretty cool. But just in conclusion, so it's first of all, it's been an absolute pleasure with this podcast with you.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your incredible success, your leap of faith, and the business that you're running right now as a co-founder. Really exciting stuff. And I think people that are listening to this, I think can get a lot out of it. It's yes, being an entrepreneur is risk. However, if you have a passion, you're solving for something, which the 3D imaging that we talked about seems like a really good solution and that could really help medicine tremendously. And from what I'm talking about with you today, it seems really exciting. So I'm excited for you. Any other final thoughts that you'd like to share with us?
No, thanks. I think you really sort of hit on if anyone wanted to ask my thoughts about being an entrepreneur, I think you hit on it. Got to plug the company. Please look at we have a website, DicomDirector.com. Needs a lot of work, but go to our YouTube channel. If you want to see what we do, go to our YouTube channel. Has some really great videos, use cases, and things. That's the much better place to go. But again, one of the pains of a startup, you need the money to do the things to make the money, and so it's always hard. So,
No, that's great. Well, thanks so much for your time today, Dr. Pearlstone. I appreciate it very much.
thank you. Thanks. It's a pleasure.